Story number 1. Underground Restaurant, New York City, New York. The invitation arrived on a rainy Thursday evening, the kind where the streets of Manhattan glisten under the glow of countless neon signs, reflecting off puddles that formed in every crevice. I was sprawled on my worn-out couch, scrolling through my emails, when the subject line caught my eye: "An exclusive evening awaits you." Intrigued by its elegance and the promise of something out of the ordinary, I clicked open the message. The email was brief, yet enticing. It extended a personal invitation to an underground restaurant nestled deep within the heart of Manhattan. The details were sparse, only providing an address in the financial district and a note that reservations were limited to the city's elite. As a freelance writer, I wasn't part of that circle, but the allure of exclusivity and the mystery surrounding the venue piqued my curiosity. After a moment's hesitation, I decided to take a chance. What did I have to lose? I arrived at the specified location just as the rain began to let up, leaving the streets slick and shimmering under the streetlights. The address led me to an unassuming door tucked between two towering skyscrapers, its entrance marked by a discreet metal plaque that read "The Gilded Fork." There was no sign, no indication that this place even existed. Taking a deep breath, I knocked 3 times, as instructed in the email. The door swung open almost immediately, revealing a man in a tailored suit. His demeanor was polite yet reserved, his eyes assessing me with an intensity that made me slightly uneasy. "Welcome to the Gilded Fork," he greeted, his voice smooth as velvet. "Please, come in." Inside, the atmosphere was starkly different from the bustling streets outside. The space was dimly lit, with antique furnishings and rich, dark wood paneling that exuded an air of old-world elegance. The scent of fine wine and gourmet cuisine filled the air, mingling with the faint sound of classical music playing softly in the background. The room was filled with guests, all impeccably dressed, their faces obscured by intricate masks that ranged from elegant Venetian designs to more abstract, artistic creations. I was handed a menu and a discreetly placed reservation card, which confirmed my booking despite my obvious outsider status. The exclusivity was palpable, each table occupied by individuals who seemed to carry secrets as deep as the city itself. As I settled into my seat, I couldn't help but notice the silence that enveloped the room. Unlike other fine dining establishments where conversations flowed freely, here there was a hushed stillness. It was as if the masks weren't just for anonymity but served a more mysterious purpose. The first course arrived promptly, a delicate arrangement of smoked salmon and capers, artfully plated. I took a tentative bite, savoring the flavors that danced on my palate. Everything was perfect, from the presentation to the taste. But beneath the surface of this culinary masterpiece lay an undercurrent of unease that I couldn't quite place. Halfway through the meal, I began to hear faint whispers emanating from the kitchen. At first, they were barely audible, like distant echoes bouncing off the high ceilings and ornate walls. But as the courses continued, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. Words floated through the air, fragmented and disjointed, leaving me struggling to grasp their meaning. "Don't leave. Join us. Forever here." The whispers sent chills down my spine, but whenever I turned to look in their direction, there was nothing but the pristine white of the kitchen door, sealed shut. I tried to focus on my meal, dismissing the sounds as mere background noise, perhaps the result of conversations carried out behind closed doors. But the unease lingered, making it difficult to fully enjoy the exquisite dishes being served. The final course was presented with an air of ceremony, a decadent chocolate soufflé accompanied by a small, ornate mirror. The waiter placed the dessert before me, bowing slightly before making his departure. As I reached for the fork, the whispers intensified, swirling around me like a sinister breeze. Intrigued and unnerved, I took a bite of the soufflé. The rich, velvety chocolate melted on my tongue, a stark contrast to the cold fear that gripped me. As I chewed, I glanced down at the mirror beside the dessert. My reflection stared back at me, but something was terribly wrong. In the mirror, I saw myself sitting at the table, but my face was different, twisted into a grotesque mask of pain and despair. My eyes, though identical to my own, were hollow and devoid of life, staring back with an intensity that made my blood run cold. I recoiled, dropping the fork as panic set in. "Are you okay?" A voice whispered from beside me, pulling me back from the brink of terror. I turned to see a woman at the adjacent table, her mask a beautiful, intricate design that framed her face perfectly. Her presence was comforting, a stark contrast to the horror I had just witnessed. I nodded, trying to regain my composure. "Yes, just a bit startled," I replied, forcing a smile. The woman nodded sympathetically. "It can be overwhelming at first. The first time, it's the hardest to understand." "Understand what?" I asked, confusion clouding my thoughts. She placed her fork down gently. "The true nature of the gilded fork. It's not just about the food. It's about the experience, the connection between the living and the other side." I felt a shiver run down my spine, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. "You mean the whispers, the reflection in the mirror?" She smiled sadly. "Yes. The restaurant serves more than just meals. It offers a glimpse into the beyond, a way for spirits to communicate and connect with the living. But not everyone can handle it." I glanced back at the mirror, hoping to find my normal reflection, but the image remained the same, my face contorted in anguish. "What happens if you see that?" The woman's expression grew serious. "It means the connection is too strong, and the spirits are trying to reach out, to pull you into their world. It's a delicate balance. If too many guests experience this, the barrier between our world and theirs weakens, leading to chaos." My mind raced, the implications of her words sinking in. "So, what should I do?" She reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on mine. "Stay calm. Don't let fear control you. Focus on the present, on the meal, on the company. It helps to ground yourself, to keep the connection stable." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to relax despite the lingering fear. The meal continued, each course served with the same impeccable precision, but the atmosphere had shifted. The whispers had quieted, replaced by a serene silence that felt almost sacred. As I finished the dessert, I felt a presence beside me once more. The woman leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Remember, the gilded fork is a place of communion, a bridge between worlds. Respect the boundaries, and you'll find the experience enriching. Disregard them, and the consequences can be dire." With those cryptic words, the final whispers filled the room, more soothing this time, as if the spirits were no longer trying to drag me in but offering a gentle farewell. I left the table feeling both shaken and enlightened, the mysteries of the gilded fork lingering in my mind as I made my way back to the entrance. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Manhattan quiet and peaceful under the soft glow of streetlights. I walked away from the building, the echoes of the night's events playing on a loop in my mind. The experience had been unforgettable, a blend of culinary excellence and supernatural intrigue that left me yearning for more answers. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the gilded fork. The invitation, the masked diners, the whispers, and the horrifying reflection all seemed too vivid to dismiss as mere imagination. Driven by a need to understand, I decided to delve deeper into the restaurant's origins. I began by researching the history of the financial district, uncovering tales of hidden speakeasies and underground establishments that catered to the city's elite during the Prohibition era. But nothing pointed directly to the gilded fork, as if the restaurant existed in a liminal space between reality and myth. Determined, I reached out to local historians and paranormal enthusiasts, hoping to find someone who could shed light on the enigmatic restaurant. Most dismissed my inquiries as the ramblings of a man too deeply affected by an extraordinary experience, but one person stood out, a woman named Clara Martinez, a well-respected historian with a passion for New York's hidden histories. Clara listened intently as I recounted my evening at the Gilded Fork, her eyes widening with a mixture of fascination and concern. "You're telling me this place not only exists but also has a direct connection to the supernatural? That's incredible and dangerous." She agreed to meet me at a local cafe to discuss further, her knowledge proving invaluable. Clara revealed that the Gilded Fork was rumored to have been founded in the early 1900s by a man named Victor Delacroix, a restaurateur with a mysterious past and a fascination with the occult. According to legend, Delacroix sought to create a dining experience that transcended the physical world, allowing patrons to commune with spirits and other entities. However, the venture quickly spiraled out of control. Reports of strange occurrences, unexplained deaths, and terrifying apparitions began to surface, leading to the restaurant's abrupt closure in the late 1920s. Some said Delacroix had succeeded in bridging the realms, while others believed he had unleashed something beyond his control. Clara and I pored over old newspaper clippings, archived records, and personal diaries, piecing together the fragmented history of the Gilded Fork. It became clear that the restaurant had been both a place of exquisite dining and a portal to the unknown, attracting those who sought more than just a meal. As we delved deeper, we uncovered a series of tragic events that had plagued the establishment. Patrons who had visited were never seen again, their disappearances shrouded in mystery. The whispers that guests heard were believed to be the voices of those lost souls, trapped between worlds and yearning for release. One evening, Clara suggested we visit the restaurant again, hoping to uncover more about its current state and possibly find a way to help the spirits trapped within. I was hesitant, the memory of my own terrifying experience still fresh, but the desire to understand outweighed my fear. We returned to the location, now a modern high-rise with little indication of its historic past. The entrance to the Gilded Fork was hidden behind a discreet door, much like before. Clara produced a vintage key she had discovered in her research, a relic from the restaurant's original days. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, we unlocked the door and stepped inside. The interior was a seamless blend of old-world charm and contemporary design, the furnishings immaculate and the atmosphere inviting yet slightly eerie. The masked diners were gone, replaced by an empty room bathed in warm, ambient light. As we explored, Clara found an old ledger tucked away in a corner, its pages yellowed with age. The entries detailed reservations, meal orders, and notes on the supernatural occurrences that plagued the restaurant. It became evident that Victor Delacroix had left behind clues, instructions on how to maintain the delicate balance between the living and the dead. One entry, in particular, stood out. To those who seek the truth, remember that respect and intention are paramount. Do not force connections, and honor the spirits that grace our halls. Only then can harmony be achieved. Clara and I realized that the Gilded Fork was still operational, albeit in a hidden capacity, serving as a bridge between worlds. The whispers and the terrifying reflections were manifestations of the spirits trying to communicate, seeking acknowledgement and peace. Determined to help, we followed Delacroix's instructions, performing rituals that honored the spirits and respected their presence. Each step was delicate, requiring a balance of reverence and caution. As we conducted the ceremonies, the atmosphere shifted, the oppressive energy lifting as if the spirits were finally finding solace. During our final ritual, the room filled with a soft, ethereal glow. The mirrors that adorned the walls began to shimmer, and the whispers transformed into gentle, harmonious voices. The masks that hung on the chairs turned to face us, revealing the serene expressions of the spirits who had long been trapped. Clara and I felt a profound sense of peace wash over us, the weight of centuries of sorrow lifting from the restaurant's halls. The Gilded Fork had been more than just a restaurant, it was a sanctuary for lost souls, a place where the living and the dead could coexist in harmony. As we concluded the ritual, the mirrors reflected our true selves, untainted by the horrors that had once plagued the establishment. The whisper ceased, replaced by a quiet stillness that spoke of peace achieved and mysteries unraveled. Leaving the Gilded Fork that night, Clara and I felt a deep sense of accomplishment and relief. We had not only uncovered the truth behind the haunted restaurant, but had also played a part in freeing the spirits that had long been tormented by their unresolved pasts. The experience left an indelible mark on both of us, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. The Gilded Fork remained a secret between us, a hidden gem that stood as a testament to the power of understanding, respect, and the unyielding human spirit. From that night on, I approached my work with a newfound appreciation for the stories behind each delivery, knowing that sometimes the most extraordinary experiences come from the most unexpected places. And whenever the rain began to fall over Manhattan, I couldn't help but feel a connection to the spirits of the Gilded Fork, a silent bond forged in the heart of the city that never sleeps. Story number 2. Haunted Dining Table. The humid air of New Orleans wrapped around me like a familiar, if slightly oppressive, blanket. I had always been enchanted by the city's blend of old-world charm and modern vibrancy, its streets alive with jazz, laughter, and the tantalizing aromas of Creole cuisine. But tonight, as I navigated the narrow lanes of the French Quarter, an unsettling feeling gnawed at the edges of my excitement. My girlfriend, Emily, and I had chosen Le Charme Maternel for our anniversary dinner. It was one of the most renowned restaurants in the area, celebrated not just for its exquisite dishes, but also for its storied history. The establishment had been around for over a century, rumored to have hosted everything from elegant soirees to clandestine meetings during the Prohibition era. The allure of dining in a place steeped in such rich history was irresistible. As we approached the entrance, the ornate wrought iron gates loomed before us, their intricate designs illuminated by the soft glow of gas lamps. The facade of the restaurant was a testament to old New Orleans architecture, with its grand balconies and shuttered windows that hinted at secrets held within. The maitre d', a tall man with a distinguished mustache and impeccable attire, greeted us warmly. "Welcome to Le Charme Eternal. Do you have a reservation?" he asked, his voice smooth and refined. "Yes, under Thompson," I replied, handing him our confirmation. He nodded and led us through the bustling dining room, where the clinking of silverware and the murmur of conversations created a lively backdrop. The decor was elegant, with crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and vintage paintings adorning the walls. As we were guided to our table, Emily and I couldn't help but marvel at the ambience that seamlessly blended sophistication with a touch of mystery. However, as we were seated, the maitre d' hesitated before pointing out a particular table. "Miss Thompson, your table tonight is table 13, he announced, a hint of unease flickering in his eyes. "Table 13? Emily echoed, her brow furrowing. "Is there something special about it?" The maitre d' hesitated again before responding. "It's a table with a unique history. Most guests choose other tables, but tonight, you have been specifically requested to dine here." Curiosity piqued, we exchanged glances but decided to embrace the uniqueness of the experience. Table 13 was situated in a quieter corner of the restaurant, its surroundings slightly dimmer than the rest. The table itself was set impeccably, with fine china and gleaming silverware. Yet, there was an odd stillness about it, a stark contrast to the lively atmosphere around us. We settled into our seats, the soft hum of conversation and the gentle clinking of glasses providing a comforting backdrop. As we perused the menu, the temperature in the room seemed to shift subtly, the warm air now tinged with an unexpected chill. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the overabundance of candles scattered across the tables. "Everything looks amazing," Emily remarked, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Absolutely. I can't wait to try the gumbo," I replied, a smile playing on my lips. Our waiter arrived promptly, his demeanor professional yet friendly. He took our orders with practiced ease, detailing the specials of the night with enthusiasm. As he departed, the room seemed to grow quieter, the usual background noise fading into a hushed stillness. It wasn't long before our appetizers arrived, each dish a masterpiece of flavor and presentation. As we began to eat, the eerie stillness persisted, the room seemingly holding its breath. I glanced around, noticing that while other tables buzzed with conversation, our corner remained unnervingly silent. Emily seemed unaffected, engrossed in her meal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Halfway through our entrees, the air around us grew noticeably colder. I felt a shiver run down my spine, my breath visible in the dim light. The pages of our menus began to flip open and closed on their own, the sound barely audible yet distinctly present. I looked down, seeing the pages turning one by one, as if guided by an unseen hand. "Emily, did you see that?" I whispered, trying to mask the unease in my voice. She glanced over, puzzled. "See what?" Before I could explain, our dishes started to shift on their plates. The elegant presentation wavered, the arrangement of food becoming disheveled. My heart raced as I reached out to steady my plate, but my hand passed through the food as if it were made of smoke, leaving nothing but an empty plate in its wake. A voice, barely above a whisper, seemed to emanate from the very surface of the table. "Get out." I froze, the words echoing in my mind. "Did you hear that?" I asked Emily, my voice trembling. She looked up, her expression one of concern. "Hear what?" Suddenly, water began to seep from the table's surface, pooling around our plates. The droplets coalesced into the words, "Leave now," written in liquid, the message stark against the pristine tablecloth. Panic surged through me as I grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her up from the seat. "Let's go," I urged, my voice strained with fear. We stood abruptly, the unsettling chill now biting through our clothing. As we made our way towards the exit, the temperature continued to drop, our breaths misting in the air. The maitre d' appeared beside us, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. "You must leave," he implored, his voice urgent. "There's nothing left for you here." Ignoring his warnings, we hurried towards the door, the oppressive atmosphere pressing in on us from all sides. As we reached the entrance, I glanced back one last time, only to see our reflection in the grand mirror opposite the door. But our faces were different, distorted and twisted with anguish, our eyes hollow and lifeless. A wave of dread washed over me, and without another thought, we burst through the doors into the night. The humid air of New Orleans greeted us, the rain now a gentle drizzle that seemed incongruous with the intensity of our fear. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of our car, our hearts pounding in our chests. Once inside, we caught our breath, the reality of what had transpired slowly sinking in. I reached for my phone, intent on calling the maitre d' to demand answers, but there was no signal. Panic turned to confusion as we looked around, realizing something even more terrifying. We had left the restaurant, but no one in the city seemed to remember seeing us there. Our reservations, our names, everything had vanished from existence. "Did you leave a tip?" Emily asked, her voice shaky. I checked the empty bill on the table, finding nothing but blank spaces where our names should have been. "I don't know. I didn't see anything." The realization hit me hard. We had been erased, our experience dismissed as a figment of our imagination. But the lingering fear and the vivid memories of that night proved otherwise. We were left with more questions than answers, the mystery of Table 13 haunting us in the days that followed. Determined to uncover the truth, I began researching the history of Le Charme Maternel, delving into old archives and speaking with longtime residents of the French Quarter. What I discovered was a tale of love, betrayal, and tragedy that had left a permanent scar on the restaurant's legacy. Decades ago, the restaurant had been the site of a passionate love affair between Victor Delacroix, the charismatic owner, and Isabelle Laurent, a talented chef whose culinary genius had brought the establishment fame. Their relationship, however, was marred by jealousy and deceit. Victor, fearing Isabelle's growing popularity threatened his control over the restaurant, devised a plan to sabotage her career. One fateful night, during a grand dinner party, Victor confronted Isabelle, their argument escalating into violence. In a fit of rage, Victor pushed Isabelle, causing her to fall and strike her head on a nearby table. The room erupted in chaos as guests tried to intervene, but the damage was done. Isabelle was rushed to the hospital but never regained consciousness, succumbing to her injuries shortly after. In the aftermath, the restaurant struggled to recover, the tragic event casting a long shadow over its reputation. Victor disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a legacy tainted by his actions. Some believed he had fled the city, while others whispered that he had never truly left, his spirit forever bound to the place where his life had unraveled. The legend of Table 13 emerged in the years that followed, the site of Isabelle's final moments. It was said that her spirit remained at that table, forever reliving the night of her demise. Guests reported strange occurrences, from cold drafts and flickering lights to eerie whispers and unexplained apparitions. The restaurant staff, shaken by the stories, began to avoid Table 13, deeming it cursed. As I pieced together the story, the connection between our experience and Isabelle's tragic fate became clear. We had unwittingly become part of the lingering anguish that haunted the restaurant, our presence disturbing the fragile balance between the living and the dead. Driven by a sense of responsibility and the need for closure, Emily and I returned to Le Charme Maternel one evening, determined to confront the spirits that held the restaurant in their sorrowful grip. Armed with the knowledge of Isabelle's story, we approached Table 13 with reverence, hoping to honor her memory and bring peace to the restless soul. As we sat down, the familiar chill returned, the air thick with anticipation. The temperature dropped sharply, our breaths visible in the cold air. The menu began to flip through its pages once more, the words "leave" now appearing as if by magic. But this time, instead of fear, we felt a profound sense of empathy. "We're here to help," I whispered, addressing the unseen presence that lingered around us. Emily nodded, her hand finding mine. "We understand your pain, Isabelle. We're here to listen." The room seemed to respond, the oppressive atmosphere giving way to a gentle warmth. The whispers transformed into soft, melodic tones, the echoes of a life cut short finding a voice through us. We listened as the story of love and betrayal unfolded once more, the emotions palpable in the air. As we spoke, the reflection in the mirror began to change. Our distorted images softened, replaced by visions of Victor and Isabel in happier times, their love overshadowed by tragedy. The pain and regret that had kept Isabel's spirit tethered to table 13 began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of peace and understanding. The final words were like a balm to the soul. "Thank you," the voice whispered, the sorrow in its tone now tinged with gratitude. "Peace at last." With those words, the temperature returned to normal, the menu ceasing its eerie movements. The mirror reflected our true selves, the lingering fear replaced by a serene calm. We knew that Isabel's spirit had found the closure it had long sought, freeing the restaurant from its haunting past. As we left Le Charme Eternal, the night felt lighter, the heavy burden lifted from our shoulders. The legend of Table 13 had finally found its resolution, the tragic story of love and loss woven into the fabric of the restaurant's history in a meaningful way. In the days that followed, the restaurant seemed to thrive like never before. The staff no longer avoided Table 13, embracing it as a symbol of resilience and remembrance. Guests came not just for the exquisite cuisine, but also to hear the story of Isabel and Victor, a tale that had transformed the establishment from a place of fear to one of healing. Emily and I often found ourselves reminiscing about that night, the experience forever etched in our memories. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, understanding and compassion could bring light and peace. The haunted dining table had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of love and the importance of honoring those who came before us. And sometimes, when the air grew thick with humidity and the streets of New Orleans shimmered under the soft glow of streetlights, I could swear I heard the faint echoes of whispers carried on the breeze, a lingering reminder of the night we dined with the spirits and helped them find their way home. Story number 3. The Warning Meal. Rain poured relentlessly down Route 66, Arizona, turning the highway into a slick ribbon that stretched endlessly into the darkness. The neon signs of roadside diners and motels blurred into a kaleidoscope of colors as my truck sliced through the storm. I was Miles Thompson, a long-haul truck driver who had spent countless nights navigating these same roads. Tonight, however, something felt different, a sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. I'd been driving for hours, hauling a load of electronics from Phoenix to Albuquerque. My stomach growled, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since lunch. Just as I was about to check my phone for any missed orders, a small, unassuming restaurant caught my eye, Route 66 Diner. The sign was flickering, its once bright letters now dimmed by years of neglect. Despite the storm, the diner's warm glow promised a respite from the elements and an opportunity for a hot meal. Pulling into the parking lot, I felt the temperature drop slightly, a chill that was unusual for this time of year. The lot was empty, save for a couple of old cars and a stray cat darting between the shadows. I grabbed my cooler, which contained leftover sandwiches and a couple of sodas, and walked towards the entrance, the door creaking open as I pushed it. Inside, the diner was a relic from another era. The booths were upholstered in faded red vinyl, the countertops polished to a dull shine, and the jukebox in the corner played an old rockabilly tune on a loop. The air was thick with the smell of grease and old coffee, mingling with the faint scent of something else I couldn't quite place. The place was nearly empty, with only a handful of patrons sitting in silent reverie, their faces obscured by the shadows cast by the dim lighting. I approached the counter, where a tired-looking waitress with greasy hair and a blank expression stood behind the register. She barely glanced up as I walked in, her movements slow and deliberate. "Hi, I'd like a cheeseburger and fries, please," I said, trying to inject some warmth into my voice despite the unsettling atmosphere. She nodded mechanically, jotting down my order without a word. I watched her as she turned away, noticing the way her eyes seemed glazed over, as if she were staring into the distance. Moments later, she returned with a tray holding a steaming cheeseburger and a side of crispy fries. She placed the food in front of me with robotic precision and handed me a small ticket along with the bill. "Enjoy your meal," she said flatly, her voice devoid of any emotion. I picked up the ticket, my confusion deepening as I read the bold letters, "Warning, don't eat." My heart raced, and I glanced around the diner, trying to find some explanation for the ominous message. "Excuse me, what's this about?" I asked, holding up the ticket. She shrugged nonchalantly. It's just part of the experience. Some people like a little adventure. I frowned, feeling a chill run down my spine despite the warmth of the food in front of me. Ignoring the ticket's warning, I decided to enjoy my meal, hoping that the oddity was just a prank or some sort of marketing gimmick. The cheeseburger was delicious, juicy, with perfectly melted cheese and a side of fries that were crispy and golden. But the warning lingered in my mind, an unsettling presence that I couldn't shake. As I finished my meal, the room seemed to grow colder, the air thickening around me. My stomach began to ache, a sharp pain twisting inside, making me wince. I tried to stand up, but the pain intensified, my body feeling like it was being squeezed from the inside out. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't budge, the handle stuck as if held by an invisible force. Desperation set in as I pounded on the door, yelling for help, but no one responded. The silence returned, louder and more oppressive than before. Panic clawed at my chest as I struggled to free myself, the pain in my abdomen worsening with each passing second. Summoning all my strength, I managed to break free, throwing myself against the door and finally bursting out into the parking lot. I staggered to my truck, the memory of the warning ticket flashing in my mind. As I started the engine and sped away, the pain in my stomach reached a crescendo, my vision blurring with tears and fear. Driving through the deserted roads of Route 66, I felt something moving inside me, a presence that was not my own. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of my reflection, but something was horribly wrong. My face was distorting, features twisting into a grotesque mask, eyes hollow and lifeless. I screamed, clutching my head as the sensation of something alive and malevolent trying to take over my body intensified. The road stretched endlessly before me, the darkness closing in as my truck's headlights struggled to pierce the thick shadows. The rain had stopped, but the air remained heavy, charged with an unseen energy that kept me on edge. I could feel the presence growing stronger, its influence spreading through every fiber of my being. Hours seemed to pass as I drove, the landscape around me shifting between the familiar sights of Route 66 and places that felt otherworldly and twisted. I saw fleeting shadows darting across my peripheral vision, whispers echoing through the silence, voices that seemed to call out to me, urging me to stop, to join them. The pain in my stomach eventually subsided, replaced by a numbness that settled deep within me. But the horror of seeing my face distorted in the mirror lingered, a constant reminder that something had taken root inside me. I knew I couldn't continue driving like this, the presence too strong, too insidious. Desperate for answers, I pulled over to the side of the road, the truck's engine humming quietly as I sat there, hands trembling on the steering wheel. I reached for the ticket, now drenched in sweat, the warning words mocking me from the soggy paper. Don't eat. What had that meant? What had happened inside that diner? As I pondered the mystery, a figure appeared at the far end of the road, standing beneath a flickering streetlight. It was the waitress, her face hidden behind the same mask she had worn in the diner. She approached slowly, each step measured and deliberate, her presence unnerving in its stillness. "Why did you eat?" she asked, her voice echoing with a hollow resonance that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to respond, but my throat felt tight, words refusing to form. I didn't know, I managed to stammer, fear gripping me tightly. She extended her hand, and I could feel a coldness emanating from her touch as she reached out to me. "Now you belong to us," she whispered, the air around us growing colder still. "There are others like you, trapped between worlds." Before I could react, the ground beneath me seemed to shift, the road bending and warping as if reality itself was unraveling. The presence inside me surged, pushing against my consciousness, trying to assert control. I felt my body begin to change, my senses dulled as something took hold, reshaping me into a vessel for the spirits that had been wronged. The sky above darkened, the stars obscured by a thick blanket of clouds that seemed to close in around us. The road disappeared, replaced by an endless expanse of shadow and mist. I was no longer in Arizona, but somewhere far more sinister, a liminal space where the living and the dead converged in a perpetual state of unrest. The waitress stood beside me, her mask reflecting the eerie light that now bathed the surroundings. "Welcome to our domain," she proclaimed, her voice a blend of sorrow and malice. "You are now part of our eternal feast." I struggled internally, fighting against the darkness that sought to consume me, but it was no use. The spirits had claimed another soul, another host for their unending torment. I realized, too late, that the warning had been more than a mere message. It was a binding curse, sealing my fate as one of the lost, forever trapped in the haunting embrace of the Route 66 diner. As the night stretched on, I became a silent witness to the endless cycle of meals and tormented souls, each patron's story intertwining with mine in a tapestry of horror and despair. The diner, once a beacon for the weary traveler, had become a tomb, its walls echoing with the screams and whispers of the damned. And so, I remain here, a ghostly figure behind the wheel of my truck, driving endlessly along the cursed Route 66, forever bound to the haunted establishment that claimed my soul with a simple warning: don't eat. Story number 4. Whispers by the Lake. I've always found solace in the serene beauty of Lake Michigan. Its vast expanse of water, especially in the winter, held a quiet majesty that was both humbling and comforting. So, when my wife, Laura, suggested a winter getaway to a quaint lakeside restaurant she'd stumbled upon online, I welcomed the idea with open arms. It promised a peaceful retreat from our bustling lives in Chicago, a chance to reconnect as a family. We arrived on a chilly December evening, the sky a deep shade of indigo, and the first snowflakes of the season beginning to fall. The restaurant, aptly named Lakeside Haven, was nestled on the edge of the lake, its large windows offering unobstructed views of the shimmering water. The building itself was charming, with rustic wooden accents and twinkling fairy lights that cast a warm glow against the encroaching darkness. Inside, the ambience was cozy and inviting. The restaurant was modest in size, with only a handful of tables scattered around the room. The decor was tasteful, featuring nautical elements and local artwork that depicted the lake in various moods. We were greeted by a friendly hostess who led us to a table near the window, our own little stage overlooking the lake. The menu was a delightful mix of comfort food and gourmet dishes, promising hearty meals perfect for the winter chill. As we settled in, Laura pointed out the expansive view outside. Our 2 children, Emma and Jack, were already mesmerized by the falling snowflakes and the tranquil beauty of the lake. After a few minutes, we began our meal, enjoying the rich flavors of the dishes served. Conversation flowed easily as we shared stories and laughed together, the worries of everyday life melting away with each passing moment. It was the perfect evening, until Emma, our 7-year-old daughter, suddenly became quiet. "Daddy, look," she whispered, pointing towards the lake. I followed her gaze and saw nothing unusual at first. The lake was calm, the water reflecting the soft lights of the restaurant and the faint glow of the moon. But then, in the corner of my eye, I noticed a movement, a shadowy figure standing by the water's edge, waving frantically. "Emma, honey, what are you looking at?" I asked, concern etching my voice. She shook her head, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "There's someone there. They're waving at us." I leaned closer to the window, squinting against the dim light. The figure was still, almost blending seamlessly with the mist that hovered over the lake. It was hard to make out any distinct features, but the motion of waving was unmistakable. Laura joined me, peering into the distance. "I don't see anything," she murmured, but her unease mirrored my own. We turned our attention back to our meal, trying to dismiss the unsettling sight as a trick of the light or perhaps a figment of Emma's imagination. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a silent tension that settled over our table. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere in the restaurant began to change. The cheerful chatter among the other patrons faded into an oppressive silence. The temperature seemed to drop, the air growing colder despite the warmth of the kitchen. I glanced at our table, noticing that Emma's plate was untouched, her attention still fixed on the lake. "Maybe she saw a duck or something," Laura suggested softly, attempting to reassure both me and our daughter. But Emma shook her head again, her small face pale. "No, it was someone else." They looked sad. The meal continued in an eerie stillness until, finally, we decided it was time to leave. The children were ready to head back to our hotel, their excitement from the evening tempered by the strange events at dinner. We stood, gathering our things, and made our way to the entrance. As we walked out into the cold night, the snow had intensified, blanketing the ground in a thick layer of white. The sky was now a tapestry of stars, their light twinkling against the darkness. The restaurant's door closed behind us with a soft thud, the warmth of the interior fading as we stepped back into the wintry air. I got into the car, starting the engine as Laura did the same. We began our drive back, the road winding through the quiet streets of the town. But as we navigated the familiar route, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The snowflakes danced menacingly in the wind, and the headlights barely pierced the heavy fog that had settled over the landscape. As we neared the highway, a sudden pain gripped my stomach. I winced, clutching my side as the discomfort intensified, making it difficult to focus on the road. Laura glanced at me, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" I nodded, trying to mask the pain, but it only grew worse. My vision blurred, and the car seemed to sway unnaturally, as if something was pulling at us from the depths of the lake. Panic surged through me as I struggled to maintain control, the steering wheel slipping through my grasp. "Something's wrong," I managed to say, my voice strained. Just then, in the rearview mirror, I saw it, the same shadowy figure from the restaurant, now standing at the water's edge, walking towards our car with deliberate steps. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized the figure was moving closer, the mist swirling around it like an ethereal shroud. Laura gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to get out of here," she cried, her grip on the steering wheel tightening. But the car felt heavy, as if gravity itself was conspiring against us. The figure reached the shoreline, pausing as if to collect its thoughts. Then, in a voice that echoed through the night, it spoke. "Don't leave. Stay with us." I stumbled forward, hands shaking as I tried to accelerate, but the car refused to respond, the engine sputtering helplessly. The figure raised a hand, the gesture both commanding and sorrowful. "You belong here. Join us." A surge of fear and desperation washed over me as the pain in my stomach intensified, my body betraying me with every passing second. I could feel something taking hold, a dark presence invading my very being, pulling me towards the lake and the restless spirit that awaited. In a final, desperate attempt, I reached out to Laura, my fingers brushing against hers in a futile effort to anchor myself to reality. But the connection was severed, the icy grip of the unknown claiming me as its own. With a last, fleeting glimpse of our terrified faces reflected in the mirror, the car gave one final lurch, then everything went dark. I awoke to the sound of soft waves lapping against the shore, the moonlight casting a ghostly glow over the frozen lake. Disoriented, I sat up, the events of the night replaying in my mind like a nightmare. But as I looked around, I realized with growing horror that I was alone. The car was gone, replaced by the untouched expanse of Lake Michigan. The air was still, the only sound the gentle rustling of the trees and the distant call of an owl. Panic set in as I struggled to make sense of my surroundings, the memory of the shadowy figure and the ominous warning still vivid in my mind. I stumbled to my feet, the cold biting into my skin, and began to walk along the shoreline, hoping to find help or at least a semblance of understanding. But the lake seemed endless, its surface smooth and unyielding, reflecting the star-studded sky in a mirror image of tranquility that belied the terror I felt inside. As I walked, I noticed something odd, wet footprints leading from the edge of the lake straight towards the restaurant, ending right beneath the very table where my family and I had sat. My heart raced as I followed the trail, the footprints almost glowing in the moonlight, a stark contrast against the pristine snow. Each step brought me closer to the diner, now appearing as a phantom presence on the horizon, its windows dark and lifeless. I reached the entrance, the door hanging open as if inviting me back inside. The memories of that eerie dinner flooded my mind, the whispers, the warnings, the distorted reflections, all converging into a singular, horrifying realization. I was trapped, bound to the place where tragedy had struck, forced to relive the nightmare that had unfolded. The lake, with its cold, unyielding surface, was more than just water, it was a gateway, a conduit for restless spirits seeking solace and, perhaps, revenge. The shadowy figure emerged from the mist, its form more defined now, eyes filled with an eternal sorrow. "Join us," it repeated, the plea resonating with a haunting finality. But this time, I knew what I had to do. The memories of my family, the warmth of our shared moments, fueled a determination that defied the darkness surrounding me. I couldn't let fear consume me, couldn't let the spirits drag me into their realm of despair. Summoning every ounce of strength, I turned away from the lake, walking back towards the restaurant. As I approached, the door swung open once more, the inviting warmth of the diner a stark contrast to the icy grip of the lake. Inside, I found the table where we had dined, the setting unchanged, as if waiting for another family to grace its presence. But this time, I wasn't alone. I felt a connection, a bridge between the living and the dead, an understanding that transcended fear. Taking a deep breath, I sat down at the table, the warmth of the restaurant enveloping me. I looked around, hoping to find my family, but the seats were empty, the spirits having long since departed. Instead, I found a small, folded note placed before me. With trembling hands, I unfolded it, reading the simple yet profound message. Thank you for listening. Peace now. A sense of calm washed over me as the oppressive atmosphere lifted, the spirits finding the closure they had long sought. The shadowy figure nodded in gratitude before fading into the night, leaving behind only the gentle lapping of waves and the soft glow of the moon. I left the restaurant, the snow now a blanket of pure white, the lake serene and undisturbed. As I walked away, the footprints that had led me here vanished, replaced by the untouched snow. The haunting whispers and the terror of that night were now memories, a testament to the thin veil that separates our world from the restless spirits of the past. Driving back to Chicago, the road ahead was clear, the storm a distant memory. The experience had changed me, deepening my appreciation for the stories that lay hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. And sometimes, late at night when the wind howled and the snow began to fall, I'd catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing by the lake, a silent reminder of the night I dined with the spirits and helped them find their way to peace. Story number 5. The Silent Return. I've always been fascinated by the legends surrounding the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Nestled in the Rocky Mountains, its grand facade and storied past have made it a magnet for writers, tourists, and thrill-seekers alike. As a writer, I found myself drawn to its haunting beauty, eager to soak in the atmosphere that inspired Stephen King's The Shining. Little did I know that my visit would become a story far more terrifying than anything I could have penned myself. It was a crisp autumn evening when Laura and I decided to treat ourselves to a late dinner at the Stanley's renowned restaurant, Cascades. The idea was simple: enjoy a quiet meal, absorb the serene mountain views, and perhaps find some inspiration for my next novel. We arrived just as the sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the snow-capped peaks and the sprawling grounds of the hotel. The restaurant was elegantly appointed, with large windows offering panoramic views of the surrounding wilderness. The interior exuded a timeless charm, with rich wooden accents, cozy booths, and soft lighting that created an inviting ambience. We were greeted warmly by the hostess and led to a table near the window, our own private vantage point overlooking the tranquil lake. As we settled in, the waiter approached, his demeanor professional yet personable. We perused the menu, delighting in the array of gourmet options and local specialties. The conversation flowed effortlessly as we discussed everything from my latest writing project to Laura's recent hiking adventures. It was the perfect setting for a romantic evening, until subtle changes began to unsettle us. Halfway through our appetizers, I noticed a chill sweep through the room, a stark contrast to the warm glow of the fireplace. Shivering, I glanced around, attributing it to the mountain air and the late hour. But then, my eyes met Laura's, and I saw the same unease mirrored in her gaze. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft jazz playing in the background. I nodded, my instincts telling me something was off. I glanced toward the corner of the room, where shadows seemed to linger longer than they should. It was subtle at first, a fleeting movement, a sense of being watched. But as the night progressed, the feeling intensified. We continued our meal, trying to push the discomfort aside, but the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The lights flickered intermittently, casting distorted shadows that danced along the walls. The other diners seemed oblivious, their conversations and laughter a stark contrast to the growing tension at our table. When our entrees arrived, the temperature plummeted again, the air thick with an unspoken dread. I reached for my glass of red wine, only to find it empty, the liquid having vanished without a trace. Laura looked equally baffled, her hand hovering over her own glass as she tried to make sense of the inexplicable phenomenon. As we moved on to dessert, a small, ornate mirror was placed before us alongside our plates. It was a beautiful piece, intricately framed with carvings that depicted scenes of the surrounding landscape. Intrigued, I picked it up, examining my reflection. But what I saw was not my own face staring back at me. It was a distorted version, eyes hollow and skin pale, a sinister smile etched across my features. I gasped, dropping the mirror onto the table with a clatter that silenced the restaurant. Laura recoiled, her eyes wide with fear. "What the hell is that?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Before I could respond, the waiter returned, his expression unreadable. He placed a folded piece of paper on our table and bowed slightly before departing. I picked up the paper, unfolding it to reveal a handwritten note in elegant script. "Thank you for returning." Confusion and terror mingled within me. "Return? We've never been here before," I stammered, my mind racing to comprehend the situation. Laura leaned in, reading the note over my shoulder. "Maybe it's some kind of joke?" I shook my head, the unease deepening. "This feels wrong. Something's not right." Determined to get answers, we decided to leave, gathering our things and making our way to the entrance. As we stood up, the room seemed to warp around us, the walls stretching and contracting in unnatural ways. The lights dimmed further, and a cold gust of wind swept through, sending shivers down our spines. We walked toward the door, but the hallway outside was different, longer, darker, and suffused with an oppressive silence. The grand chandelier overhead cast eerie shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. I reached out to push the door open, but it remained stubbornly closed, the handle unresponsive to my efforts. "Let me try," Laura said, stepping forward. She grasped the handle and gave it a firm twist, and to our horror, the door creaked open by itself. We exchanged a nervous glance and stepped outside, the cool night air biting at our skin. The parking lot was empty, the snow-covered ground reflecting the dim light of the street lamps. We hurried to our car, the feeling of being watched intensifying with each step. Just as we reached the vehicle, I glanced back toward the restaurant, and there, at the window, stood a figure, tall, cloaked in shadow, its eyes fixed on us with an unearthly intensity. Heart-pounding, I fumbled with the keys, finally unlocking the door. As we sped away, the image of the masked figure burned itself into my mind, the weight of its silent gaze leaving me shaken to my core. Back at our hotel, Laura and I sat in the lobby, trying to make sense of the night's events. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white, but the sense of unease remained, a lingering shadow that refused to dissipate. Unable to sleep, I decided to investigate further. I returned to Cascades the next day, determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious invitation and the sinister presence that had haunted our dinner. The restaurant was busier now, the atmosphere light and cheerful, but my unease persisted. I approached the hostess, my heart racing. "Excuse me, I have some questions about last night," I began, trying to steady my voice. She looked at me with a polite smile. "Of course. How was your meal?" "Actually, something strange happened. We received a note that said, 'Thank you for returning, but we've never been here before.' And there was a mirror that showed a distorted version of me." Her expression faltered for a split second before she regained her composure. "That's unusual. Let me check with the manager." She left, and I waited anxiously, the minutes stretching into what felt like hours. When she returned, she looked concerned. "I apologize for the inconvenience. There seems to be some confusion. We've never had a family dine with you before. Are you sure you were at our restaurant?" I nodded, recounting the night's events in detail. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through them before she quickly masked it with a professional demeanor. "I'm so sorry. Let me see what I can find out." She disappeared into the back, returning a short while later with a grave expression. "It appears that our records don't show any reservation or visit from you two. In fact, we've never had a family dine at table 13 before." I felt a chill run down my spine. "So, how do you explain the note and the mirror?" She hesitated, then sighed deeply. "There have been some strange occurrences around here over the years. Table 13 is known among the staff for being peculiar. Guests have reported feeling watched, and there have been whispers of apparitions and unexplained phenomena. We've always chalked it up to the old building's history, but it's never happened this way before." Laura reached out, squeezing my hand. "Do you think it's connected to the hotel's history? Maybe something supernatural?" The hostess looked sympathetic. "It's possible. The Stanley has a long and storied past, and some say it's still haunted by the spirits of those who passed through its doors. If you're comfortable, I can arrange for a private meeting with our manager to discuss this further." Grateful for any answers, we agreed. The manager, a stern yet kind woman named Margaret, welcomed us into her office. She listened intently as we recounted our experience, her face growing increasingly troubled. "We've had reports of strange things happening at Table 13, she admitted. "But nothing like what you described. We haven't seen any other families there. It's as if you were invisible to everyone else, and yet you left a mark with that note and the mirror." I frowned, trying to piece together the puzzle. "Is there any way to communicate with whatever was watching us? To understand why we were targeted?" Margaret nodded slowly. "There might be. We have a medium who frequents the hotel to help guests connect with spirits and resolve lingering issues. I can arrange a session if you're interested." Desperate for answers, we agreed. That evening, Margaret introduced us to Evelyn, a serene woman with an air of quiet strength and a deep understanding of the supernatural. We sat together in a quiet room, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows on the walls. Evelyn closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "I sense a presence here, one that is both sorrowful and restless. It's connected to Table 13, and it has something it needs to convey to you." I glanced at Laura, who squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Can you communicate with it? Can you ask what it wants?" Evelyn nodded. "I will try. Please remain calm and open to any messages that come through." She began to chant softly, her voice blending with the ambient sounds of the hotel. The room grew colder, the candle flames flickering wildly. I felt a presence shift around us, the air thick with emotion. "Why did you come back?" Evelyn asked, her voice steady. "What do you seek?" There was a pause, then a whisper filled the room, echoing off the walls. "Return to find peace." Laura leaned forward, her eyes filled with concern. "What do we need to do to help you find peace?" The whisper responded, its tone pleading. "Acknowledge the past, release." I felt a jolt of understanding. We need to honor whatever happened here, to help resolve whatever is keeping you tethered to this place. Evelyn nodded, opening her eyes. "Yes. By acknowledging the past and offering closure, you can help free the spirit bound to Table 13. Determined to assist, we decided to return to the restaurant, armed with Evelyn's guidance. That night, we made our way back to Cascades, the snow now gently falling, the world outside calm and serene. The restaurant was bustling again, unaware of the previous night's events, the ambience warm and inviting. We approached Table 13, the memory of the previous night vivid in our minds. I placed the empty plates on the table, repeating our intention to honor and release the spirit. Laura offered a silent prayer, her eyes fixed on the empty seat opposite us. As we sat down, the temperature in the room dropped once more, the lights flickering in response. The ornate mirror on the table shimmered, and the distorted reflection from before reappeared, but this time, it was different. My own face stared back at me, the horror replaced by a serene calm. "We're here to help you find peace," I said softly, my voice steady despite the lingering fear. The mirror's surface rippled, and a gentle light enveloped the table. The distorted features softened, transforming into a peaceful visage of a woman, Eleanor, I realized, the spirit connected to Table 13. Her eyes held gratitude, and a warm smile spread across her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now filled with relief and contentment. "I can finally rest." As the light faded, the temperature returned to normal, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The room felt lighter, the tension dissolved by the act of understanding and compassion. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the night's events settling over us. Evelyn arrived shortly after, her presence reassuring. "You did well," she said, her voice gentle. "By acknowledging the past and offering closure, you've helped release Eleanor's spirit from her torment." We left the restaurant that night feeling a profound sense of accomplishment and peace. The Stanley Hotel's haunted reputation was tempered by our personal experience, a reminder that understanding and compassion could bridge the gap between the living and the dead. In the days that followed, we returned to our lives with a deeper appreciation for the stories that lingered in the shadows. The experience at Table 13 had not only provided inspiration for my writing but had also strengthened the bond between Laura and me, a testament to the power of empathy and the human spirit. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind whispers through the trees and the snow blankets the earth, I catch a glimpse of Eleanor's peaceful smile in the reflection of a window, a silent reminder of the night we dined with the spirits and helped them find their way to peace.